High Amsterdam. No, high Amsterdam is the high of the drug. And it's 25 years of following drug trends in Amsterdam. But it's also a little joke because our promotion campaign is I Amsterdam. So it's really huge letters in the public domain. And when you make it high, then the users will understand what I mean. So, so in my presentation, I will tell you about. In my presentation, I tell you about the Amsterdam Drug Monitor. It was developed in the early 90s, and I mainly focus on the substance use and the dynamics during the last 25 years. And at the end, I will run through some of the conclusions. Well, I start with a flashback first to some iconic subcultures from the 60s, like the rock and roll, the notion of penny boys, the provos, hippies, the punks. And since the early 90s, these street cultures were vanished and turned into rave and fluid cultures, club cultures. And since then, I followed these club culture scenes from the 90s. And in 2010, about my thesis, I discussed a few months before finishing my thesis, I discussed with my professor about the title, I Amsterdam, Rhythm, Rush, and Rules. And he said, well, why not the rules first? Because you belong to the faculty of law, and it's always the rules first. Well, the question, of course. But by studying the subject, I discovered that the new styles and rhythms were often the finest order, and that shift the mindset and the setting and creates new cultures and new forms. And this results sometimes in moral panic, followed by new regulations. And there are many examples of it, how a music style symbolized with a drug like jazz. Jazz was born in a whiskey barrel and grew up on marijuana. Punk was born in the gutter and grew up with amphetamine. And house was born in a club and grew up on MDMA. So answering this question, it starts with a new rhythm and changes in the drug use follow, finally resulting in new rules and regulations. Sometimes history is created through chance occurrences, like MDMA meeting the synthesizer, the Roland 808, you see in the left slide. This created a new universe of new possibilities in music. Electronic music was an absolute game changer in nightlife. Starting in Detroit, empty warehouses turned out to be a perfect decor for raves. From Detroit, it spread like a bushfire to Chicago, New York, Europe, and beyond. Right from the beginning, ecstasy changed the mindset. The new love drug was different from all other drugs. Besides the difference, in effect, it also came in pill form, which was very convenient for consumption. It also changes the setting, like you see on this photo. By connecting different scenes like bodybuilders and hooligans and hip-hoppers and creative suddenly blended together and spontaneous outer raves or outskirts of the city. In the center, new extravagant clubs appeared in empty old theaters and cinemas. So the drug setting model from Zimberg on this slide can be very useful to understand the dynamic interaction between these three factors. I had a discussion once with Alexander Shulgin, the guy with the beard, and I met him on a conference, and I was wondering what he thought about MDMA, because he resynthesized the MDMA, and he was a little surprised about how we did it in Europe, doing popping ecstasy pills in a crowd with loud music, because his experience was doing this with friends on a Saturday evening with classical music and doing some juice and hugging each other with yoga exercise in the garden. So it was a completely different setting. So this also depends what kind of what kind of setting you study. So, and also what your experience and what your expectations is. Let's see here. In the mid-90s, 5 years after the synthetic and electronic music revolution, Amsterdam was facing a booming dance industry with new venues, more drug use, and increasingly more health incidents. So now new regulation was necessary. With the birth of a new chemical generation, we are wondering what the next trend would be, the drug trend would be. Together with the Jelinek Center, so it's a local health service center, we developed a monitor following drug use and markets over time. And we came up with three different perspectives. The first is prevention indications about drug markets. The second is yearly rotating surveys in nightlife among different subgroups. And now I was focused in this presentation to the clubbers and ravers. And the third is an ongoing panel study among trendsetters in nightlife. We're interviewed twice a year, face-to-face with a topic list and questions relating to the drug setting issues. Right from the beginning, the monitor became an important tool for the city of Amsterdam to follow new developments. Over the last 25 years, we conducted 50 rounds of interviewees, average of 25 panel members each round, and all participants deeply involved in nightlife. The panel interviews are essential for discovering new networks, new scenes, shifts in music style, and emergence of new substances among subgenerations. And they rotate, the panel rotates on average every 5 years. So this kind of new subgeneration is coming and going. Analyzing the interviews, we're able to form distinct profiles who are representing a typical subcultural category. First is the creatives. They really know about music, what DJs playing, what kind of DJs come from Berlin or from New York, and they represented the DJs, producers, etc. The alternatives have a strong affinity to music and a broad perspective on what's happening in the dance as well as the urban scene. The psychonauts have more the drug experience capital, have lots of knowledge about drugs, promoting drugs and exchanging knowledge through the internet. And the last is essentialist. They reflect the body capital, and they like to dress up, look good, and are rather gender and race fluid. And each of these profiles embrace specific cocktails in drug use. So this slide represents 5 cycles, and this is kind of a qualitative gold mine that gives information about the successive generation. Every subgeneration reflects the zeitgeist, but all the solid melts into air when a new subgeneration takes over. And this is 5 cycles. So the first cycle is like 0.0. We start our monitor. And so it's the rise of the underground and upcoming major festivals. And there's an overall increase of drug use. So it's in red. It's increasing. Cycle 2 is a decrease in drug use, a rise of urban and glam. It's more how you look like. Being cool is more important than being wasted on drugs in the club. The cycle 3, it shows a low level on drugs use and start of the zero tolerance approach with visible and strict policy enforcement on festivals. Cycle 4, there's a new techno wave coming up, a new peak period on drugs, and increased availability of new psychoactive substances, and the rise of a new upper ground, which is in between the mainstream and the underground. And cycle 5 is developments in social media, provide increasing networks, possibility and promotion of events. Going out is using WhatsApp, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. And work and leisure time are less separated. In the summer season, there's diffusion between night and day festivals. So this also reflects what's going on in the city. This from a macro perspective. In the economy of Amsterdam, so it's growing exponentially. So you see this red arrows. So the scene is going to the outskirts of Amsterdam because the inner city is slowly colonizing by the tourists. We have conducted 6 surveys amongst clubbers and ravers over the last 25 years. So in general, the use, can you see it? Is the purple? Yeah. In general, the use of ecstasy fluctuates over the years, but is consequently partly drug number 1. Amphetamine and ecstasy both show a remarkable increase between 2008 and 2013. There's a wild chapter with millennial took over the arena, and a range of new rave communities were blooming. In age of social media, it was easy to organize rave flash mobs on new locations, and they were less regulated. Historically, amphetamine was mostly related to scenes like punk, rock, and grunge. And since the birth of dance music, this shifted to hardcore, hover, raves, and techno. And cocaine commonly is used in more private settings like pubs and after parties. It's more sophisticated in relation to other stimulants who are more related to nightlife. 4FA made its introduction in our survey in 2013, and I think one of the reasons for popularity was that there was a reaction on the heavy dosed MDMA in nightlife. This is the psychedelics. The use of psychedelics is less predominant in nightlife, especially in clubs. However, the fluctuation over the last 25 years is interesting. And you see that the 3 CBs replaced the mushrooms and the truffles, and is the most popular hallucinogenic drug now in nightlife. The third group of drugs are the anesthetics. How did anesthetics like GHB or ketamine emerge in clubs where usually only uppers were used? Why is nitrous oxide so popular? So you can ask this to these panel members and trendsetters why these drugs are going up, and what's the fuss all about, and what's the thing why they are so popular in club settings. Well, I can't have a relation with anesthetics doing in clubs. So in the 90s, aesthetics were only popular in the underground and more isolated scenes like the travelers, the psytrance and the kinky networks. And with the disappearance of the underground and the end of the 90s, the anesthetics slowly made their way into the new upper ground. The popularity raised with increased popularity of techno music with its accompanied after parties. Especially is that setting anesthetics were able to gain a strong foothold. So GHB was one of the reasons to do it yourself drug, and you can buy it on the internet, the GBL, and mixed it with sodium carbonate and water, and it was fixed in 50 minutes, and you got the GHB. The nitrous oxide has made a shift under the EU law from a pharmaceutical status to consumer goods in 2017, and it's now in the Food Act, which is more available, easier available now. And the ketamine originally entered the scene through travelers and is now widely available through delivery dealers. Especially GHB led to controversy and from the beginning. I wasn't intrigued by its rise in popularity. It can be explained by different motives, like a desire for a short high, as a come down at an after party to counteract stimulants, or as an addiction to intensify the mix. The effect is euphoric, relaxing, sociable, sensual, and users tell us that in contrast to ecstasy, it doesn't have a bad come down. But the growing popularity also has a downside with the rising numbers of health incidents since 2000. Now, putting it all together, we can see in one blink that the drug use goes on waves over time. With rise and falls and periods of stabilization. And this slide shows the recent use of the most popular drugs among clubbers and ravers. The data collected through our drug use surveys generally correspond to the information retrieved from our panel study interviews. I will mention a few striking developments. The prevalence rates shown 2 peaks between 1998 and 2013, reflecting a complete new generation. The uppers, is the purple ecstasy and the blue speed, in the second peak in 2013 were on a higher level than the first peak. The use of new club drugs doubled since 10 years ago since the introduction of the anesthetics, like the yellow K, the brown nitrous, and the pink G, but actually used on a lower preference level than the uppers. In 2013, when drug use declined, there were 3 exceptions. Red 4FA, which was a brand new drug since 2012. The second one is the white cocaine. It also reflects the booming economy. And 3, the marketing of yellow ketamine is professionalized in the last 5 years. So for the first time in 2013, ecstasy is more popular than cannabis. From this perspective, it would speak of a normalization in nightlife. So now I'm closing to my conclusions. The drug use of marginal subcultures in the past, like the punk, the hippies, rockers, and rastas, etc., has made a shift to mainstream youth culture today. The current generation of millennials show an ambivalent lifestyle. The use of drugs and sustaining a healthy lifestyle do not necessarily exclude each other. They so-called time-scheduled hedonists embody a wellness paradox in which work, study, sport, leisure time, including drug use, are tightly planned. Drug use is increasingly seen as normal and is becoming an uncontroversial aspect of the Dutch youth culture. So to finalize my story, I will highlight some of the outcomes of your ongoing research. The party scene is a difficult terrain to map. The landscape is constantly changing and expanding. One important conclusion is that the fluctuations in drug use seem autonomous from repressive policy. We detected two major peaks within a 15 years interval, and in between we see a fall, stabilization, and rise, each with the introduction of a new subgeneration, following shifts in music styles, technology, and drug markets. Every new subgeneration creates a unique blueprint of momentum in history. In this postmodern society, drugs are no longer seen as opposite of working life, but as integrated in lifestyle. Nowadays, we live in a pick and mix consumption society, and users can choose which drug will fit their mood for work, for dance, for sex, for dreamlike states, etc. The antenna monitor has grown to be an important tool because we include dynamics of set and setting for a more comprehensive understanding of drug use and risk behavior. Best prevention policy is a pragmatic approach, defining problematic substances, user groups, or settings, and based on a policy cooperation between authorities, institutions, and actors in the scene. But at last, we should not forget the responsibility of the users themselves to not shit in their own backyard. The best risk management is taking care of each other, of yourself and each other.